How long ago was this? I asked her as she was tearing up. This was many years ago, way before we met. She said. So why didn't you report this to the police? I asked. Are you going to report your kiss? She asked me. I turned around and ignored her. I said, Are you going to report your kiss? She repeated. Look, I know it is important for me to report it, but it was only a kiss and you were raped, which are two different things. I said. Why are you defending that monster? Amy said as I continued to ignore her. I told you. I said as Amy then got out of her car and took a big breath in. I looked at her. Okay, I will report him to the police, but yours is so much more serious. It doesn't matter how much it was still assault by the police officer. Amy continued as we proceeded to argue around the car. Look, please come back into the car and just sit and listen to me. I said to her as Amy was getting more and more stressed. She slowly got herself back into the car. Don't even speak to me, she said as she turned on the car and drove off from the hospital parking lot. I sat there looking around the car as I was watching the landscape and people on the outside move around. Amy was driving around town as she didn't say anything to me. Please talk to me, I said to her after a 10-minute break as Amy was still ignoring me. Where are we going anyway? I asked her. My house, Amy said as she added, Now shut it. She continued as I just sat there in silence. We drove around town for 50 minutes before we arrived at her house. Okay, we are here, she said as she turned off the engine. All right, I said as I opened the door and slowly got out using my crutch. Amy then got out the other side and walked around and assisted me. George, there is something I need to tell you, she said as we slowly walked towards the front door of her house. I began to worry. What is it? I said as she got out her keys and slowly unlocked the door. You! The man shouted as I stood still. You had an affair with my wife, he continued as I began to sweat. No, look, it was one night, I said to him. Doesn't matter. The man continued as he came out the front door and came over and grabbed my neck. Ow! I said as I was pushed against the wall. Can you stop? I tried to say as I was choking. You are in a whole lot of trouble, the man said as Amy stood there and laughed at me. Help me, Amy, I tried to say as I couldn't really get my words out. All of a sudden Amy jumped on her husband. Stop it, she said as her husband was shocked and confused. I thought this was what you wanted, he said to her. Well, I don't know, she said as she began to worry. George is a very nice man, she suddenly said. And he has been through a lot, Amy continued. The husband looked at Amy. You still love him, don't you? He said. Yes, Amy replied as she dashed over to me as I was sitting on the floor. How can you not love him? Amy said. You said you loved me, we got married because you said you loved me, we had kids because you said you loved me, the husband continued to shout. Amy then grabbed onto her belly. This baby, it isn't yours, she said to him as I kept silent. It's George's. Amy continued to spill the beans. Well, you can fuck right off, the husband said as he changed his tune as he went into the house and slammed the door. You did that for me? I said to Amy as she kissed me on the cheek. I love you, George, she said as she grabbed my hand and placed it on her stomach. This baby is yours and we are going to be a happy family. But where will we live? I asked her. All of a sudden the husband threw several suitcases out the front door. Fuck off, he shouted before closing the door. Amy rushed over to pick up all her clothes. We can stay with my sister, Amy continued. Oh, okay, I said as I looked at her. She came over and helped me up. So how are we going to get there? I asked her. We can take my car. But I thought your husband owned that. I said. How do you know that? Amy asked me. Well, I sort of did my research while I was in hospital. I admitted as Amy was stunned. So you were stalking me? She asked. No, I just needed a background check. I continued as Amy was getting creeped out. Okay? She said as we walked towards the car. We got into the car as Amy put her suitcases into the back of the car. We then drove off as her husband came back out of the house and shouted at us. Never come back. You slut. I placed my hand onto Amy's knee as we rolled down the road. So what is your sister like? I asked her. She is very nice. Amy continued as she smiled at me. I love you. She said to me as she honked the horn as traffic began to build up. We went down the highway as I was looking at the cars going past. I'm sorry about your leg. Amy said. Hey, that isn't your fault. I said to her. Yeah, but I feel bad for it. Amy continued as we pulled up on the house's drive. Well, here we are. Amy said. This is my house? I said as I woke up from napping. What? This is where my sister lives. Amy continued as she hopped out the car and walked over to the front door. All of a sudden the front door opened as I was still sitting in the car. That's my mom. I said to myself as she came out and gave Amy a hug. I didn't expect to see you here, sis. She said to her. Well, I have some good news. Amy continued. What? My mom said. Well, I have a boyfriend. Amy said as she rushed over to the car and helped me out. This is George. She said as she helped me balance. That's my son? My mother said. What? Amy said. I looked embarrassed. You didn't tell me this was your mom. Amy said to me. I didn't know you were her sister. I replied. Oh. Amy said as she then went red-faced. My mother was looking at both of us. Look, I didn't know this was going to happen. She said. True. I replied as Amy looked at me. I don't know what to think. She said as I began to walk into my house. So son, how did you lose your leg? My mom asked me. Oh, thanks mom, like you didn't notice. I said to her. Well, I have been busy running your store. She said. Oh, how is the old store going? I replied to her. We have a lot of business. She added. Oh, that is good. I said as I hugged her. Yeah, but we had to let Sandy go, as she was stealing from the till. Oh. I said as I was shocked. I walked into the front room and sat down. Amy was still standing outside. Amy! I shouted as I wanted her to come in. My mother then brought out some family photos. See, here is your aunt when you were just a child. She said. Oh wow. I said. I never noticed these photos before. I continued as my mom kept pointing them out. Amy came strolling in as she sat down in the other seat against the wall. Gee, this can't go on. She said suddenly. I looked at her. What? We are related, this isn't right. She announced. I looked at her. I know finding this out makes you feel uncomfortable. I said as my mother walked out the room and into the kitchen to make some drinks. Please, I love you, Amy, there is no one else I would rather spend my life with than you. I said. She looked at me. Just leave me alone. She said to me. No, please. I continued as all of a sudden I said. I love you, Amy, will you marry me? My mother brought in some tea as she dropped everything as she came in. What do you mean marry her? My mother asked me. Mom, I really love her. I continued as Amy then dashed past my mom and rushed upstairs. Oh, look what you made me do. My mother said as I was just sitting there as I began to cry. No, please, Amy. I said as my mother grabbed the broom and mop and began to clean everything up. I was crying as my mother was cleaning up the smashed teapot and cups. Son, I think you need to rethink everything, she said to me. What do you mean? I said as I took some tissue and cleaned up my face. Well, dating your aunt isn't what everyone is doing, she continued. Well, I am different, you always knew that. I know, but my sister, your aunt, is taking it too far, she continued. Oh, shut up, I replied as I tried to get up from the sofa, but I didn't have the strength as I fell down. Do you need help? My mother said as she looked at me. Yes, please, I continued as she came over with the mop and pulled me up. Thanks, Mom, I said as I came over and gave her a kiss on the cheek. Do whatever you want, kid, it's your life, she said as I slowly walked upstairs to find Amy. Amy, I shouted as I crawled up the stairs. I went into each room trying to look for her. I couldn't find her until the final room. What are you doing in my mom's room? I said to her as I came in. This is not a good idea, she said to me as I came in and sat on the bed. Why? I asked her. Because it's weird for family reunions, she said. Is that it? I said. I guess, she said as she shrugged her shoulders. But no one is going to care about that. I care, and don't you care about my feelings? She said. I do, I replied as she came over and kissed me on the cheeks. You find someone, she said as she got up and left me on the bed. I tried to grab her hand as she walked past. She closed the door behind her as I was left in the room all alone. I then heard the front door open and close all within a second. I then made myself comfortable and began to fall asleep on the bed. I love her, I said to myself as I closed my eyes. I went to sleep as a headache was coming on. I began to dream about dinosaurs as I needed to take my mind off Amy and everything she brought to me. I slept for over 20 minutes. Before all of a sudden I woke up as if I was having a nightmare. Shit, I said to myself as I woke up. I looked at the clock against the room. What time is it? I said as I was panicking. I tried to get up as I forgot that I lost my leg. Oh, I said to myself. All of a sudden my mother came back into the room. Son, this is where you got to, she said to me. I looked at her. Where is Amy? I asked her. She left a long time ago, she doesn't want to be with you anymore, son, it's time to move on, my mother said as she came in and began to tidy up. But I love her. I know you do, she replied to me as I tried to get up from the bed. But you can't always get what you want in life, she continued. I loved you, Dad, for so many years before we split, and I miss him every day, she added as I took a second to listen to what she was saying. I guess, I said as she helped me up. All of a sudden I looked at my mother as she pulled something out of her back pocket. Here, she said. Now get back to working at the store, I need a holiday, she added as she gave me the keys to the store as she fell down onto the bed. I guess I can afford a couple of days, I said to her. Finally, she said as took a big breath and let it all out. I then began to try to walk out of the bedroom as my mom was getting onto the bed and getting comfortable. I slowly walked out as all of a sudden there was a knock at the door. Who could that be? My mother asked as she sighed. She just wanted to rest. I will get that, I said to my mom as I began to limp down the stairs. I went to the front door as they continued to knock. One moment, I said as I quickly looked through the spy hole as I didn't want to look like an idiot when answering the door. I slowly opened the door and noticed it was the mailman. Oh, hello, I said as he passed me the letters. Hello, there, handsome, is your mom in? He asked. She is just upstairs having a sleep, Oh, okay, don't forget to remind her about bingo tonight at 7. The mailman said as he winked at me. I was confused as I smiled and took a look at the letters. Okay, I said as I closed the doors. I took all the letters into the front room as I began to read them. Oh, it's my mother's birthday and I completely forgot, I said as I received birthday cards on her behalf, from the mailman. I then proceeded to look at the birthday cards and got myself a little more upset. I didn't get anything for her birthday, I'm such a bad son, I said to myself as I opened the next card and found it was from me to my mom. You are the best mother in the world. It read. I didn't send this, I said to myself as I was confused. My mother walked into the room. I looked at her. I thought you were upstairs getting some sleep, I said to her. Yes, but I wanted to come see what was in the post today, she said as I was trying to hide the birthday cards from her. Do you remember what day it is today? I asked her. Oh no, it's not a bank holiday, is it? She asked. I have to cash this check, she continued. Oh no, it's not, I said as I gave her the rest of the post, hiding her birthday cards. Here, I said as I gave them to her. Oh, thank you, she said as she sat down and began to go through them. She ripped one open and began to read it. Another bill, she said as she sighed. I can't afford this, she continued. I looked at her. What do you mean? I asked her. Well, since I had to cover your store, I had to give up my job at the library. Oh, I said as I was shocked.